Yes, yes, 100% yes. That's how you do an episode of Ash vs. Evil Dead. Guys, gals, and everything in between, another episode of Ash vs. Evil Dead has aired, and if you ask me, this is probably the best episode. Once again, as you guys know, I discuss spoilers in TV shows, so big spoiler warning for some stuff coming forward. You've been warned. Here we go. We open up the episode and we see Ash and he's walking towards the cabin, and it's immediately nostalgic, which is funny because they actually didn't film at the original cabin. They filmed this in New Zealand. They had a team come out and replicate it, and you can see the detail, like down to everything. When Ash walks up and you see that cabin, like the way things even move, it's the same as Evil Dead 2, and it's so nostalgic. You know that part in Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, if you played that game? When you go back to Metal Gear Solid 1, it's mind-blowing how nostalgic it was. He walks up to the house and he hears something behind him, turns the gun, and it's the cop Amanda. As there was a YouTube commenter last week who I said that I couldn't remember the cop's name, and the guy was like, Amanda. And I sat there and I was like, thank you. Thank you to that commenter. I don't know if you were mad at me or not, but if that was just you being funny, actually helped me remember her name. So, Amanda, I now remember. So thank you, YouTube commenter. Amanda is there, and she says that they all split up, and so she found him first. And why is he trying to go alone? He was like, because every time I come out here, people I care about die, and I don't want you guys to die. And she was like, well, we're in this fight together. So Ash goes, well, all right, you're already here, let's do this. So they go into the house, and seriously, it's so nostalgic, like everything. The deer head on the wall like falls down, and I was like, that was one of my favorite parts of Evil Dead 2, was where the deer head's like, meh. So as he's walking through the house, it is seriously, this you can already tell from the beginning of the episode. What I loved is that it felt very just personal. Like, this was a personal battle for Ash, and we actually got to see character development for Ash. It's affecting him to his core. Like, he's got that personality on throughout most of the show where he's like, hey baby, come on, let's go. But no, not this one. This one, the walls have come down. It is a personal fight for him, and I like that Bruce Campbell conveys that with this character. They see the cellar, and he's like, all right, we gotta bury this thing. But they look down at the cellar and they're trying to open it, and the way they cut is like she's shaking the door and you can hear whisperings, and they intercut footage of the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, and I thought that was a really nice touch because the editing on this episode was spot on. So they realize they need a crowbar, so this is where Ash and Amanda decide to split up. Now showing where Pablo and Kelly are. They're walking through the woods and like, we took a wrong turn. And they had a humorous segment where they're like, oh, well, how do you know? Well, the car's right there. Although I feel like Kelly could have seen that unless she just, I guess, really wasn't paying attention, or else she needs some eyeglasses. But they're like, oh, see? And then... Okay, I just have to say it. You know it from ahead of time. You know that part in Prometheus when they said, oh, the UNSC or I want to say UNSC Prometheus, flies in, and number of crew members, and it said something along the lines of like 50 something, and you just sat there and you were like, we're gonna get a body count in this movie. Oh yeah. Like, you just see this group of stereotypical Seattleites, the millennial generation, walking down, and from what it sounded like, they were in New Zealand or Britain, which makes sense because that's where they filmed it, even though it's supposed to be Michigan. And they're supposed to be at one with nature, and there's some really attractive women, and I was sitting there going, you're all expendable. And I'm just gonna think it's awesome. Call me morbid, but I know it's coming. And they didn't actually die in this episode. They're supposed to be taking a separate path. But I love how they immediately thought they were being robbed, where they had the guns walking around, and they're like, we don't have anything. And then they pull out their stuff, and one has like a pop flare gun, and Kelly's like, is that a flare gun? He's like, yeah, I'm not afraid to use it. I was sitting there and I was like, oh my god, the millennials are so sad. So they're like, oh, no, 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 just show us where the cabin is. And there's a girl that's into Pablo, and Kelly just is kind of like, oh, well, he's taken. I'm not with him, but he's taken. And I was sitting there just like, she actually secretly likes him too. And they are each not gonna know it. And I thought that was cool. Like, seeing those little things like that, because it reminded me of, those, when you have like a group of friends and two of the friends develop a crush on each other and they kind of have that thing. It just reminded me of that, and it made the characters feel more real. As we go back to the cabin, I absolutely love this, as Ash has to go out to the garage, and Amanda was gonna go, but Ash pauses and is like, no, my ex-girlfriend's out there, or her head, and she had a rockin' body though. Amanda was just kind of like, you go. So Ash, knowing he has to fight this personal battle, like he walks into the shed, and he's looking around and he sees the skull and it's right there and he remembers. And you can see it's a personal fight for him. And I like that because this episode, it didn't have a whole lot of violence. Well, we'll get to the violence. But it was more along the lines of him having a mental battle. And it showed a lot of character. So as he's in there, he can hear her voice, and then the door closes. And that's when it gets real, is the door closes and the head turns into his ex-girlfriend. And she's talking to him like, Ash, you can't save her. We could have been together, Ash. And call me crazy. Now, it could have been ridiculously good special effects, or it could have been a new actress who looks just like her, but call me crazy, but she looked exactly like the girl from Evil Dead 2. Not even joking. Like, look at her. She looks exactly like the girl from Evil Dead 2. And I was like, that's either really good makeup, CG, or wow. That was the thing that impressed me so much in that segment. And also where she's taunting him, and he's like, you're dead, just stop, you're not real anymore. But yet it's in his head, he's connected, he can't help but remember the times he had with her. So you see that he doesn't want to kill her. And then it starts getting messed up where her head, like you hear the chainsaw, and her head just starts bleeding and stuff, and I was like, oh. Now we cut back to Amanda, and Amanda has a really strange fight because they lead you to believe that Ash got out, and Ash is standing there at the door, and he's like, we could run away together and be a thing, and he woos her, they kiss, and then they show the hand. I wasn't expecting it. I thought they just jump cut, because they were walking with Pablo and Kelly were walking with the crew, and then they show her. And I was like, oh, she must have made it out and stuff. And then all of a sudden when they kiss, the hand, and you're like, it's the Evil Dead hand. And she's like, oh, what's that? And he just sort of pauses and is like, oh, yeah, my old hand, it must have reattached itself. And then they have a fight because he's not the real Ash. And it reminded me a lot of Army of Darkness, where Ash had to fight himself. Ash also sort of had to fight himself in Evil Dead 2, but in all reality, he had to fight himself, for the most part, in Army of Darkness. And I thought that was a really interesting choice of battle. It almost felt like, to me, an old enemy was coming back. And I thought that was cool. As they're duking it out, it's really intense. Like, they're throwing each other against the wall, and he's taunting her, and he's like, you never could have had me, I knew that you'd fall for this and stuff. And he's hitting her, and then she just takes a cleaver and just starts hacking his hand off. And he's like, and he's freaking out. He's like, see, it must have just been me. And it's fake at this point. And Ash is stuck in there, and he's getting those weird spinny buzzsaw things that nobody should own, because bleh. If a demon possession was in my house and I had one of those, oh yeah, you betcha you'd all die. Because they fly everywhere. Those things are lethal. I don't care how old they are. Freak me out, man. Demon Ash is fighting with Amanda, and back and forth, and then I didn't expect it. oh my god, guys, gals, and everything in between, I did not expect it. Where all of a sudden he just smash, and with the cleaver, and then just in the neck. And he's like, no, that's what I call cleavage. And he's being all demon, and she's bleeding, and he's like, I reckon you got about a minute before you bleed out. And she's walking, and then she stands up in the air, and I was sitting there, I was like, is she planning something? And lo and behold, she wasn't. She falls over and lands on the deer antler thing, and then boom, dead or dying. And he's just kind of like, well, she's dead now. And then that's, of course, when Ash comes in and he doesn't expect it. And he's like, oh my god, what happened? And she explains, and he's like, I told you, like, everyone who comes here that I love gets killed. And he feels remorse, and you see it. It's a personal battle for Ash. This is an amazing episode because you see the humanity. As I said, the walls have come down. He actually cared for this woman. And so now all of a sudden, he feels responsible again. Ash gives her a goodbye kiss, and I thought that was actually going to be where the end of the episode was. And then Pablo and Kelly run in, and they're like, what in the world happened? Ash is sitting there going, well, it was me, but it wasn't me. It's an evil me, and they're just looked as confused as anybody who says that would be. And so, of course, naturally, Ash goes and runs off to have a battle. And I was very compelled to watch this fight because it was a personal fight. It was Ash versus Ash, and they both knew each other to the most intimate level because they were both Ash, just one is the demon version. So as they're beating each other up on each other's weaknesses, we're like, oh, I know you have a weak knee, bam! I loved that because it was like, not almost like two brothers fighting each other, but it was just, imagine fighting yourself. I tried to picture it in my head. I was like, I would. Like, even if you don't bring it up every day with yourself, you would naturally know something that would hurt you a lot. And so it was like watching two people who have the same strengths and weaknesses, but try and take advantage of it. It was really compelling. And then they start to strangle each other so we can have a cliffhanger for end of episode. I loved this episode. It was seriously my favorite episode of the season. It kept the pace snappy. It kept moving. And it took it in twists and turns where, like, I knew they would go to the cabin, but I didn't know when and how. And they kept they kept me guessing. I did not expect Amanda to die. Like, seriously. I just learned her name, for God's sake. And I didn't expect Amanda to die, so it was an interesting surprise. I want her character to not die because I really like her character. But at the same time, I was sitting there going, oh my god, Amanda's dead. And, like, it just keeps the show moving in twists and turns. I love this. So which means for this next episode of the finale, guarantee you, Xena Warrior Princess is going to come back, and they're going to be like, alright, we're going to have a fight. Ash is going to be on the warpath, and then, of course, our expendable income millennial hipsters show up, and I guarantee you that there's going to be a body count with that. So, what did you guys think of the episode? Did you guys like this one as much as I did? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got plenty more videos coming to you. Hail to the king, baby.